All right. How you doing, folks? Ron Raymond here from the Raymond Report, along with Rusty the dog, right on cue.
There's an opening that wasn't planned.
Hey, welcome to Home Built Studios, right? It is Wednesday, hump day, and Rusty's day for November 18th, and I'm always joined here by my good friend, co-host, Ross Benjamin of RBWins.com. How do you top that, Ross?
You can't, man. I can't do anything for an encore after that. I'll tell you, Ron, everything's good. I hope all's okay on your end.
Yeah, no, that's a drop the mic, and we'll see you Thursday.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, hey, Ross, how was the Ross Benjamin Tuesday night?
I passed. I didn't use either one of those games. I mean, but you're talking enormous favorites, 31 and 30 points, something like that. Kent State actually covered the number. Even though they only had a 7-point lead at the half, they end up winning 69-35. And Buffalo continues to look good in the MAC, but they didn't have the killer instinct last night. And that can be understandable. Look, I mean, they're going on the road against a young Bowling Green team who, by the way, folks, if you're looking forward on these MAC games during the week, keep in mind Bowling Green, over 60% of the roster are true freshmen or redshirt freshmen. So that's a very young team, and they're taking their lumps early on.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, yeah, but you got to rebuild, right? When know your veterans have graduated and you're bringing in the new core of guys. But some of the good coaches they prepare for that stuff, right? And I'm sure Bowling Green's on top of it, but
it's a new coaching staff too at Bowling Green, Ron, too. So he's trying to do it the right way.
Awesome. 3 games tonight, Ross, in the MAC. We're gonna get to those games near the end of the show because we got some great systems that we're going to share today with the viewers, which I'd like to welcome this time on our YouTube channel and on anywhere you watch or listen to our podcast. This is the Raymond Report along with Ross Benjamin of RBWins.com. And each Tuesday to Friday, we do a podcast here. And once the NHL and NBA gets going, we're going to have probably throw in a little Monday here and have a little bit more to talk about. But I thought, Ross, for this hump day, I got 20 great live systems that are this weekend for the NFL and college football, and I'm going to share with you right now. And let me go right here and do a share screen. All right, do you see the Chippewas right here?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Okay, so in order to get this, folks, you go to atsstats.com, you go to Ron Raymond or the Raymond Report, 20 live winning betting systems. And Ross, you know what? Going through these systems yesterday, I was like, okay, there's some really good ones in here. And just to to define a system, and because I'm sure you get this a lot too. What's the difference between a trend and a system? Maybe you want to give out that explanation.
Well, a trend is for a specific team. It's how a specific team does situationally against the spread. And a betting angle or betting system it's one and the same, has to do with how all teams do in all specific situations. So a betting trend would be, we're going to talk about college football today. So a betting trend, for example, I'm just talking off the cuff here and using an example, Ron. A betting trend might be Alabama is, or Toledo is 0-5 straight up in ATS since last season as a conference road team. A betting angle might be any college football team that's won their last 2 games by 21 or more, and they're facing a team that's lost their last 2 games by 21 or more, is 58-21 against the spread. That would be a betting angle. So again, a trend applies to a specific team, and a betting angle or betting system, one and the same, applies to all teams in specific situations.
Now, that's a great explanation right there on the trend and the systems. And Ross, which do you put more value into, the trend or the system?
Definitely the system.
Yeah,
definitely the system, because it's sustainable, Ron. The trends, when you start going back 10, 12 years on team trends, again, the personnel has changed, the players have changed, especially in college football, right? I mean, at the very best, you're going to have a guy for 4 years. And nowadays, if they're real good, you're going to have them for 2 years. And if they're not starting after 1 year, they're transferring. So There's a lot of different variables in college football. And I do put emphasis on team trends when they apply to, for example, a team trend that may apply to Alabama, for lack of a better example. Nick Saban's been there for quite a while. And I go back to a team will take on the personality of their head coach. So in that particular instance, and anything similar to that with a stability in the head coach and coaching staff, I put a little more emphasis on team trends there. But overall, Ron, to answer your question, betting angles and betting systems are more sustainable and more consistent than anything you're going to see in the team trend.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And like you said, a trend involves, players for a certain amount of times or athletes for a certain amount of years, where a betting system can go back 20 some years with different players. But you know what, Ross, there is some trends that I will put more weight in gold when I'm handicapping. I'll give you an example. Remember that trend when Tampa Bay played in cold weather, stadiums like Green Bay, New England, or the weather was 32.
Good point, Ron.
Yeah,
very good point.
Those are the type of trends that I think that makes sense to me, right? Because they're the teams from the the southern climates like Miami, Jacksonville, Tampa Bay. They're used to shorts and flip flops, and then all of a sudden they're going to Lambeau Field in January, where that's an afterthought. But those are types of trends that I think you got to find those type of trends. But trends.
Well, let me ask you a question, Ron. From your personal experience, I mean, are you seeing a common denominator as far as results go with warm weather teams going to cold weather teams in November or December? Are you seeing that it's across the board, or is it just one team is pretty good in that situation, other team's terrible?
Yeah, I'd have to do more research in it, but I know teams like Tampa Bay, they don't do too well when it comes to the cold. I'd have to check the Miami because Miami, they come to Buffalo, New England twice a year, so those I'd have to do a bit of research on that.
And based on that, they don't do very well when they go to Buffalo and New England. Well, they haven't in the past. Let's put it that way. They lost their opener at New England, but that game was played in September in 70-degree weather. So.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would almost venture to say, Ron, if you do go dabble into that further, you're going to see pretty consistent numbers between all of those teams when they go to cold weather climates in November and December. Again, it's irrelevant in September and October, Ron, because the weather's pretty mild anywhere you go in the East or Midwest. Then
true. Yeah, that's true. All right, let's look at our first system, Ross, and it involves the game between New Mexico Lobos and the Air Force Falcons this weekend on Friday night, November 20th. Now, the Falcons are a 7.5-point home favorite. The over-under at 55. And I got a trend or a system. I keep calling it a trend, but I got a betting system on the over in this game, and it goes like this. Any college football home team the last 5 years playing in November, and it's week 8 to 12 on the calendar, coming off an over, coming off back-to-back straight-up losses, and it coming off 2 ATS losses in those straight-up losses, 4-8 against the spread, 5-9 straight up, but 14-0 to the over.
Yeah,
not a bad system here. So
clarifying to the listeners and viewers, it's week 8 to 12 or games 8 to 12.
Yeah, week 8 to 12 on the betting calendar, the Nevada rotation, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's coming off back-to-back straight up and ATS losses is what that basically says. I mean, during the month of November, I'm trying to figure out if there's something that jumps out at me here, and it really doesn't. So it's just a matter of, hey, when you have, it's not a huge sample size, but it's big enough over a 5-year period to take seriously.
And, looking at the Air Force and New Mexico, looking at Air Force on the season so far, they are 1-2 straight up. Obviously, they don't have a lot of games in the calendar. New Mexico 0-3, 2-1 to the over, and 1-2 for Air Force. I'm trying to find if there's any systems here or trends in the to complement this this system here. and I'm not seeing nothing huge here.
I
But
mean, you're looking for a team trend that complements the system, correct?
exactly,
Yeah. Yeah.
on this because sometimes like I always say, right? You put the indicators together. The
Yep.
forecast though, Ross, the ATS forecast has the Falcons losing. Actually, we have New Mexico winning 31-28, the over/under at 59. So there's a couple of indicators, and this is what handicapping is all about. Like I had a phone call yesterday with a client, and he says, "Okay, I'm trying to understand your system. How do you make a pick? How do you form a pick?" That's a perfect example right there. When you find enough indicators like Air Force on this system, and then I look at the computer forecast, and then I'll look at the Kogo. The Kogo on this game is 50%. Those are things that lead me to the well, right?
Yeah.
And then let's be honest, Ross. We've been doing this long enough. You get a sense. It's almost a sixth sense, knowing, man, I got a really strong play here.
Yeah, and Air Force is unlike Navy and Army. Yeah, from this respect, Ron, they all run the triple option, right? But Air Force typically has a better passing game. They usually have a pure passer than when he's needed to or called upon. You could trust him a lot more than a Navy or Army quarterback throwing the ball. And also, I would take a look at, after looking at this angle, I would take a look at how New Mexico has done against the run in their first 3 games, because they're going to be facing, a high-powered rushing attack from Air Force. So those are even further indicators, is what I'm trying to say.
Yep. And that's, you have to, right? You got to include the system, like the offensive system. They handicapping Army and Tulane this weekend. It was a little bit tough because an Army team falls behind a Tulane. Those option teams, man, I was just like, okay, this is going to be a tough get-go here to get back in this game when you're down 2 touchdowns.
So trying to come back on a Tulane team that runs the ball awfully well. It's not like they're playing a spread offense that on occasion will go 3 and out and you get the ball back a minute later, and then you can go on a long drive. Tulane is a grinded out team as well. They don't run triple option, but they're run heavy.
Yeah. In this game between New Mexico and Air Force, according to our stats here, Ross, New Mexico ranked 92 on offense and Air Force 89. But I take that with a grain of salt because a team in the SEC and a team in say the Conference USA, the scoring offense is a little difference, right?
Yep.
Coastal Carolina taking on Appalachian State this weekend, and I'm going to bring up this game right now. Looking at the line on this game, we have Coastal Carolina really having a great season, 5-0 up against Appalachian State, 5-0. Appalachian State, Ross, we know they're a great program, right? We can go back to that Michigan upset back in the day, but they've been a good team that produces great coaches. And the thing with Appalachian State, their coaches keep moving on.
Yeah, I think Coastal Carolina is 7-0 and App State is 6-1.
Sorry, last 5. Yeah, last 5.
Yeah, so really good matchup here, and you're looking at a college football angle here. Any college football home favorite total between 47.5, 51 after 12 to 15 days off. So both teams are coming off at least a week of rest, and the game is on a Saturday, which is important. Coming off a bye, which we already know, and a 5-game winning streak. Both teams are off 5-game winning streaks. Yeah, well, you got 2 good teams that are really hot coming off rest. It makes sense.
Yeah, and the thing is, this COVID era, right? Looking at Coastal Carolina, their last game was against where is it here? South Alabama, was a 23-6 win, and then Appalachian State. They've been, they're not blowing out guys. 17-13 win over Georgia State, and then 38-17 against Texas State. So, and 31-13 over UL Monroe. But I do have a system here, a trend favoring the Appalachian State in this game to the under. Appalachian State, the last 3 years on the road after a division game, 0-9-1 to the under. And when they're coming off a home win as a favorite, 1-10-2 to the under in their next game. So
what is this system? How far back does it go? I know the first one went back 5 years.
Yeah, 96. This one here. So if it doesn't say, so
you can see how rare this situation is. We're living in that COVID era where a lot of teams are getting buys, right, Ron?
Yeah.
Either by consolation or by design. or by cancellation or by design. So that's why you're not seeing a big sample size of these. But when the situation has occurred, Ron's angle is shown to be fruitful if you took the under.
We have a question here, Ross. It says, top of the morning, guys. That's from Grand Flash Herb. Good morning, Gran. Paul D says, hey, y'all are OGs. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I love the show and have a phenomenal teaser for you guys tonight. Over East and plus 13 to them, and over in Central versus West at 52. It's an absolute lock. Again, me and Ross, we talked about teasers. I'm not a huge teaser guy, but Paul D, I'll keep an eye on that one for you tonight. So he likes the over East.
Eastern Michigan he's referring to. Yeah.
And plus 13 to them, and over in Central versus West at 52. Absolute lock. All right. Well, hey, Paul, wish you all the best, buddy. Hope it comes in for you. Tulsa is 0-6 first half at ATS at home in conference game. Absolute lock versus Tulane. What do you feel about halftime, like first half?
I like halftime play. I don't use either. Okay. Halftime plays or first half plays or teasers. But if you ask me which one I think is more, your odds are better, I would say your odds are better on a first half bet. Again, you know, people don't realize over 70% of the time when you win a teaser, you would have won the parlay anyway. So I'm not a proponent of teasers. I know a lot of people out there like them. It's a safety blanket, and some people are very good at them. So, you know, I'm not casting stone at anybody who likes to play teasers. Good luck with that tonight, sir.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Ross, LSU taking on Arkansas. This should be a good game. Looking at the line on this game here this evening, you got LSU -3, 63.5 is the over under. Now we all know LSU had a COVID issue, so they couldn't play Alabama. And when any college football road team like LSU is this weekend on the schedule, it's week 8 to 12, and they've been off for 20 or more days, and they're coming off a one game loss, and they allowed 40 points or more against in their last game. So they lost 48-11 to Auburn. The over 17-1 in the next game. And the system here favors the over between LSU and Arkansas on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's that many situations that have arisen. How long does that go back?
96. So if it doesn't say like last 3-5 years, it's automatically
96. Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised there's that many situations, Ron. I almost want to say, well, most of those situations have probably came in a bowl game, because it's up until this year, getting 20 or more days off during regular season action. I can't recall a lot of teams that have gone through that, but the system doesn't, or the computer doesn't lie. 18 situations since 96, which is for less than one per year. So yeah, I mean, to me, that shows a lot of credibility. 17-1 to the over. You know, especially when you look at LSU, they did allow 40 or more in their last game, and they've allowed 40 or more like 3 times this year, if I'm not mistaken, Ron.
LSU, so looking at their games, 35-44 against Mississippi State, 41-7 against Vandy, 45-41 against Missouri. Yeah, but that probably game was misery for Coach O. Hey, 52-24 against South Carolina, and then 48-11 against Auburn. But you make a great point, Ross. Let's be honest. With all these postponed games, a lot of these next games, it feels like a bowl game for these teams, right?
Yeah. It's just, and again, you're looking for supporting factors, right? And you just rattled off those scores. LSU has given up 40 or more on 3 separate occasions this year. And I think 5 games they played, Ron. How many games did they play altogether?
For the LSU or?
Yeah, LSU.
Yeah, LSU so far, they are checking their record. Where is it? They are 2-3 on the season.
Yeah, 5 games. They've given up 40 or more 3 times, and they've scored 40 or more a couple times. So there you go with supporting factors. when you're looking at angles and looking for further identifiers, a 17-1 over angle since 96, and then you're looking at LSU scores. So, again, to me, that's a strong angle and strong supporting factors there.
Yeah, and let's be honest, the LSU defense is not the same as it was last year,
No.
obviously.
Yeah.
And looking at Arkansas, they've been involved in some pretty crazy games, right? 63-35 against Florida. So their defense is not bulletproof. 24-13 against Tennessee, 42-31 against Arkansas. Man, I feel like I'm handicapping a Big 12 game here. 33-31. But hey, you're not every year is going to be a Picasso year for these conference, right? Like I've noticed, and I'm sure I'm not I'm preaching to the choir here. You get some years where the defense dominates a conference, and then other years it's even, and then the offense really dominate. And I think because of this COVID situation, a lot of people aren't tackling a lot in practice, or fundamental tackling is right out the window, right?
No spring practice, shortened off season. A lot of precautions when it comes to contact even before the season started because of COVID-19, all adds up to bad tackling.
Lions fan says Western Michigan, Central Michigan under 58.5. We will handicap those games after these systems. Sippy says Southern Miss. Question mark. That I don't know if we're not handicapping that game on Thursday. I don't think, right?
No. Southern Miss, I would have a hard time taking against anybody right now. Off the top of my head, I don't even know who they're playing this week, but they've really struggled this year.
Yeah. Paul D says plus 185. I have no idea what he's referring to there. Great money management. Line. Yeah, maybe money line. That's right.
Yeah.
Simon Laguna says Toledo first half team total over 17.5. Ball State money line. So we do have a lot of guys that play.
Ball State money line. I mean, again, folks, you're getting into some huge money lines there. Ball State's minus 14. So I don't know what their money line is, Ron. I would imagine it's somewhere around minus 700. Stay away from those money line plays when it's that big. I mean, I understand when you take a shot on a money line, if a team is minus 2.5 or less, you want to cover yourself. You just want to win the game, and you're not laying a lot of juice. But when you start getting into laying the money line on teams that are minus 14 on the point spread, you're getting around the area where you're laying 6-7 to 1. That's not smart.
Yeah, and
no disrespect intended. It's just advice.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you're going to bet a money line, that's because you believe that team's going to win, not only like to cover the spread, but you feel also they're going to win the game straight up. That's how I feel whenever I take an underdog. Yeah. Okay, 80% of the time I feel they're going to cover. The other and win the game. There's 20% where I know they just stay within the number. But you got to have that feeling too when you're taking the money line bet that you really feel that they're going to cover and win that game straight up, and they got to have the tools, right, to win that game.
Again, laying that kind of money and that kind of juice, you may win that game tonight, but sooner or later you're going to get burned. Think about this: even if it's 6 to 1, okay, which I probably think it's closer to 7 to 1. If you lose that game, you got to win 7 games in a row just to be in the black after that. So it could put you in a precarious hole, in a precarious situation.
Florida going to take on Vanderbilt. We had a nice system last week on Vanderbilt in Kentucky, which cashed a nice ticket. And that was a low total. It was like 41.5 or something like that. Yeah. And it went over 67. Now Vandy's taking on Florida. A good pick. It was your best bet last weekend, the Florida Gators. And now I have a system here, Ross, on this game. And it goes like this. When any 10 points or more underdog, so it doesn't matter if they're home or away, after a conference game during the month of November on 6 days rest, and they scored 35 points or less in their last game, which they did against Kentucky, and their current opponent that they're facing has a 80% or higher win percentage, 10-2 to the over. So 12 occurrences since 96. Not a lot of occurrences when you think back. It goes to 96. But 10-point dog after a conference game, November, 6 days rest, scored 35 points or less. And I wish it was or more. because, or less, it's,
Yeah.
that's my only, if, to criticize this, it would be that. But an opponent like Florida who can put, and, you got Trask who, right now he's probably the leader in the Heisman Trophy, 10-2 to the over. If Vandy can put some points on the board, I think this one flies over.
Well, they will put some points on the board because Florida's defense, Ron, if you look inside the numbers, their offense is what carries them.
Yep.
Their defense has given up some yards and points this year. And Vandy's coming off a couple pretty decent offensive games for them by their standards. So, yeah, and as far as the low amount of situations that's occurred within this angle, remember, we're narrowing this down to the month of November. So it's not like you're looking at the entire schedule through 1996, from 1996 throughout the year. We're getting it down to just the month of November. So that might explain the low amount of occurrences.
Yeah. And the thing, like you said, right, going back to 96, and I love the fact that these are, like we said at the top of the show, they're not trends. These are situational things that happen on different teams with different personnel. And there, to me, there's more weight in it, like you mentioned. And I think that this is what I love about these systems. And it's a good way to start off your handicapping, because when you get a slate of, 50, 60 games on, where do you start, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I mean, again, you got to look, when you look at these angles, they got to make sense. Number one, they got to be pertinent. Number two, if you can make sense out of it and deem it to be pertinent, keep in mind, a lot of times a bookmaker makes a point spread based on a power rate. Well, they always make it on a power rating, and also based on public perception. So, from the week before. So it all falls within what we see in it. A lot of people call this a betting angle. Some call it an algorithm. Okay. And again, to specify, when we're looking at this particular angle right now, for example, in the Vanderbilt, Florida game, that's all college football teams in this precise situation. Okay.
exactly. Yep. So, okay, now we got a side. I think when I was doing this research, I was saying, man, this is all totals, which I'm fine with, because I find I do better with totals than sides, because it involves both teams. When sides are tough. Here's a bet against angle against Ohio State. So if you're thinking of taking Indiana this weekend, we got a good go against system. And that's what I love about these systems too, right? It doesn't favor the team that you're announcing the system on. It could work against them. Any college football home team in November during week 8 to 12, playing Saturday, coming off back-to-back straight up wins, coming off a 21 to 24 point win in their last game, and they're on a 3-game win streak, 3-11-1 against the spread. Indiana, you know what? There's people out there that think they're not for real. I'm just going to bring up their last couple of games. This is not it's not the same year as we're used to, right? Look at Penn State, 0-4, or 0-4. Indiana, 24-0 against Michigan State. They pitched a shutout against Michigan State at Michigan State. 38-21 versus Michigan. They finally got that win against Michigan. 37-21 against Rutgers, and then that lucky stretch opening night, 36-35 win over Penn State. You know what, Ross? Does this fall into our uncomfortable pick situation?
I don't know if it falls into uncomfortable. Main team in the country is a 20-point dog. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't really label that as uncomfortable. I think a lot of people are leaning toward taking Indiana at 4-0, rated number 9 in the country with almost three touchdown spot. So I wouldn't label that as uncomfortable, to answer your question, Ron.
Well, the thing I say it's uncomfortable is when you got teams winning by 40 points, 50 points. College football is a different animal. We all know that.
Yeah.
But it's just I just don't like laying so many points in a game. Anything can happen, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at this one. Maryland taking on. Let me see here. Bring bring up that game who they're playing. I know Maryland. Bear with me here, folks. I know this is
Maryland's coming up back-to-back straight up wins as a double-digit underdog. Their game against Ohio State was canceled last week.
Yeah, so we got Maryland taking on Michigan State, what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Now, in this game, Maryland's a 6-point favorite. The over-under at 55.5. Looking at the system, it favors the over here, Ross. Any college football home favorite after a division game, after 12 to 15 days off, coming off a road win as a dog, which they did in their last game against Penn State, I believe it was. 35-19. And they're coming off an under 13-5 to the over in the next game. So this is not a bad system when you think about the parameters that we included in this one.
Yeah, just the only concern I have is Michigan State has scored 7 points combined in their last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You're saying it supports the over because on the left-hand side it says under 55.5.
Yeah, sorry, it should say over. It's my mistake.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I would be a little bit hesitant there just because of Michigan State's been so inept offensively. But again, Maryland's not a real good offense or defensive team, and they've proven they could put points up this year with Tua's brother at quarterback, Ron.
Oh, that's right.
Been terrific over the last couple games. So yeah, I mean, I could again, to me, 13-5 over the total since '96. That's not real strong, is what I'm trying to say, in my opinion.
Okay. Coming off a road win as an underdog when Maryland's at home, 9-4 since '96 to the over. So a couple indicators pointing towards the over in this game. The next one here, Ross, we got North Texas taking on Rice. I believe it's Rice they're playing this week, and I'm pretty sure.
That's correct.
So, all right. So looking at this game, North Texas, here it is. All right, so looking at the system, when any college home team last 5 years in the month of November, week 8 to 12, coming off a win versus a Conference USA opponent, and they're coming off a road win, 16-5-1 against the number, and they are a 1.5-point home underdog this weekend. So nice little home the dog system here for this weekend. Unfortunately, the forecast, though, for the computer pick has Rice winning 31-25, so we don't have the computer backing up this selection. The chance of covering in the rain report has a 63% chance of covering for North Texas, who are coming off a 52-35 win in their last game. They haven't played in over a month, Ross. October 17th was their last game against Middle Tennessee State. So just because of that, I think I'll probably be off that game because, what you've been off for a month.
Yeah, and not only that, I don't trust teams that can't stop anybody. North Texas falls under that category. Look at the amount of points they've given up this year around game by game. They've given up quite a few points. I can't trust the team. And plus the fact, like you said, they've been off for so long, you don't know what you're going to get. And Rice I believe, is coming off a win as well. So
30-6 against Southern Miss.
Yeah. So I'm not crazy about that, be quite frank with you.
Okay. Florida International. When any college football road underdog on 7 days rest, coming off one over and coming off an ATS loss, 4-14 to the under, 3-15 straight up. Looking at Florida International this weekend. Just going to bring up that game right now.
Florida International, one of the worst offensive teams in college football. So right off the get-go, when you see a total in college football of 43.5, that's not like the NFL. Actually, in the NFL right now, it would even be low with all the scoring going on in the NFL. But that's an awfully low total for college football, and it's rightfully so, because look at FIU as far as what they've done offensively this year, Ron. They've been pretty anemic in that regard.
Yeah, 1938 against Florida Atlantic, 19-10 loss to Jacksonville State, Primetime's team. 28-31 against Middle Tennessee State. But here's a funny score.
No, Liberty, that's not Primetime's team. Jacksonville State's different than Jackson State.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought it was Jacksonville State. Well, Jacksonville State, isn't that Prime's team?
No, Jackson State, which is an FCS school. Yeah.
Okay. And then Liberty taking on FIU, 36-34 win for Liberty. That's a little surprising when you think back, eh?
Yeah, it is. And that was their best offensive output of the year. Go figure. But you can see by the scores, Ron, they don't put up huge offensive numbers or put up a lot of points.
Yeah. Computer forecast agrees with you, Ross. 20-18, the over-under at 39. So, and the over-under in that game is 43.5. Yeah. Looking at the next game, it's off the board, Texas A&M, so we won't go in that one. Penn State under 48.5. Now, looking at Penn State coming off that loss last weekend to Nebraska, man, they're really they're struggling right now in Penn State.
They're playing Iowa this week, right? Correct, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Penn, just bringing up this game right now.
Underdog of 3, and they're a 2.5-point home underdog, if I'm not mistaken, during the month of November, coming off 4 ATS losses, in which they allowed 30 points more in back-to-back games. I believe they've allowed 30 or more in all 4 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you are right.
Yeah, I would have a hard time pulling the trigger there on this.
On the under?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Iowa. Plus the fact you're looking at 13 situations, not a huge sample size since 1996, and then you're narrowing it down to the month of November, and I'm not crazy about this system whatsoever, because I'm not going to be able to find any supporting indicators, in my opinion.
Well, here's my my view on this game. Now you're playing Iowa, who are coming off a couple of wins now in their last 2 games, 35-7.
They looked really well, yeah,
and then 49-7 against Michigan State. If you're Penn State, now you're going back to the drawing board. Your risk tolerance level of pulling, you're not putting anything new probably on offense or defense, because you're just, what you got right now is not working. You want to get better at it. I'm thinking as a coach perspective, right? Get back to your fundamentals. And whoever's the play caller is probably, going to have not an itchy trigger finger to pull the, risky plays. So he's probably going to get more conservative with his play calling. So I think the computer forecast here has Iowa winning 27-18, the over-under at 46, and the total's 47. So it's down to 47. It opened up at 4. Well, it was 48.5 yesterday. So money is coming in on the under in Penn State and Iowa.
Yeah, and they had 501 yards of total offense in their last loss against Maryland, I think it was, and still lost the game. Who did they lose to the last game, Ron? I'm sorry.
Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska. They had 501 yards of total offense at Nebraska, and they still lost. So, just based on the amount of points and yards they're giving up, and they've had a couple decent offensive outputs in those 4 losses, I don't like that play at all. I don't like that angle whatsoever.
Yeah, hey, and there's a lot of games on the boards, right?
Yeah.
Including this one. You got Kansas taking on the Texas Longhorn. Man, Kansas is Les Miles is just not having a good year. 0-7 on the season, taking on a Texas team now who's won 3 straight games. The line, though, finding it a little bit low, 28.5. And, it's pretty bad when you call a low, minus 28.5 a little bit low. 58.5 is the over-under forecast. Does like Texas here, 41-18. And the system goes like this, Ross. Any college home underdog, week 8 to 12, on 12 to 15 days rest on a Saturday, allowed 40 or more points against in their last game, and they're coming off a road loss and a 5-game losing streak, 1-12 to the under in their last 5 games. That the 5-game losing streak we're referring to the last 5. Yeah. It should be for 5 or more, but 1-12 to the under in this game. I don't know if I don't know if I can bet the under here.
No. Kansas can't stop anybody. Texas might go over the total by themselves in this game.
Wisconsin, I got a nice little system here on Wisconsin, and looking at Wisconsin coming off that big win last week against Michigan, and now they're going to face Northwestern. This Northwestern team is funny team. Like offensively, they don't bring me out of my seat, but they do have a very good defense. Their linebackers are awesome. I've been watching 2 of the last games of Northwestern's when they played Nebraska and they played Purdue. And I'm really impressed by the defense on this team. Offensively, a bit shaky, and you can tell by the number of points they've been putting. It's not a lot of points, 27, 21, 21. But they did put 43 on Maryland in game one. Now, the system on this game here, Ross, any college football team that's 7 to 9.5 point favorite versus a division foe in November, coming off a 2-game win streak, and they're coming off a win over a Big Ten opponent like they did in their last game against Michigan, 13-1 to the over. What do you think of that one?
It would be tough for me. First of all, I don't like the parameter of 7 and 9.5. I think that's too tight of a parameter, in my opinion. And I wish the computer would say conference opponents when it comes to college football instead of division. During the month of November, coming off to, yeah, I would have a hard time pulling the trigger on, just because of what you just said regarding Northwestern. Leaves a lot to be desired offensively and pretty good defense. And Wisconsin's a run-heavy team. So, I mean, that is an awfully low number, though. So that would be the only thing that might entice me.
A low number at 45.5. Yeah, it is. That's because of the lack of offense that
right. And a good defense. And, Wisconsin likes to run the ball. Wisconsin plays good defense. I mean, they shellacked Michigan in the last game. Would they give up 7 points in that game?
Yeah. It was 49-7 or something like that.
Yes, something along those lines.
South Alabama taking on Georgia State Panthers. Now the Panthers are 4-point road favorite. The over/under at 57.5. Looking at this system here, any college football pick them to +3 last 3 years to November, coming off an ATS loss and coming off a straight up loss in that game. 26-5 to the over. Wow, here finally we got a bit more volume here with these last 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So, and then our forecast, Ross, we have 35-27 for South Alabama and 63 as a total, and the Kogo is at 72%. So a lot of indicators of the ones that we've done so far, the first 13. I think this is the strongest one in my view for the systems to bet on this weekend.
Yeah, starting with the point spread of pick to +3 underdog, virtually an even game where the bookmaker is seeing the matchup to be fairly even from a power ratings standpoint, because that pick to +3 is only because of giving one team a home field advantage. During the month of November, you got an even matchup late in the year and a team coming off a straight up an ATS loss. Yeah, I mean, to me, I would take a second look at that and see if I could find more indicators there.
Yeah. I like it. I think it's a solid one. I'll have to do more. And the fact that the percentage play does favor it. What did I say? Was that 63 or
26-5 over is no fluke. I mean, I know it's only 3 years, but still, that's you're talking about an 84% win percentage there.
Look at you with the quick math there, Ross Benjamin.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Tennessee taking on Auburn. Now the Tigers a 10.5 point favorite. The over under at 50.5. Looking at the computer pick, we got Auburn winning 32-14. The Tigers coming off a 48-11 win in their last game against LSU, and Tennessee 24-13 against Arkansas. A game they were winning at halftime, I believe, was 13-0, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. This Tennessee team, I've watched them a few times. They'll break your heart. They started the season 31-27 against South Carolina. 35-12 win over Missouri.
Yeah.
And then then they got thumped by Georgia. And since that thumping, it's not been good for Tennessee. They've lost 4 straight in that regards. Any college football team that's 10 points or more favorite last 3 years, totals between 47.5 and 51, coming off back-to-back straight-up wins and coming off a 2-game win streak like Auburn has. Only 3-14 against the number, but 15-2 straight up. Wow.
Yeah. So this supports who?
It supports Tennessee +10.
Yeah. And so basically you're any college football underdog of 10 or more, it supports. And the line is 10?
Yes, it is. 10.5.
Okay. I would throw this right out the window.
Really?
Because 10 or more, I bet the majority of these I would like to know the average line in those 17 games, meaning college football underdog of 10 or more, what's the average line? Because you're right at 10. I would like it a lot more if they were like plus 21, because plus 10, I mean, you almost have to lose by 9 or less, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, again, when I look at angles like this, it's 10 or more. I don't want to be right on the border, the low end of the border. You follow me, Ron? Where it's
Yeah,
just
no, I hear you.
10 or 11, because now, there's going to be a lot of wins within this system where teams lost by 20, 21 points and they were huge underdogs, because you're talking about a broad base of 10 or greater. Now, if you were getting 2 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns as an underdog, I'd put a lot of more stock in this. I don't like this one at all, just because of that factor.
I'll tell you why I like it, Ross, is because they give you the total in this system. And when you have a total, that tells you a couple of things. One, the defense, from either team, they're giving you what type of game this is going to be from a defensive point of view.
And because if it's 47.5 to 51, that's a low total for college football.
Exactly. So when you start doing the math, minus 10 and you got a total of 47.5, you got to me, anytime I get a system that includes a total, I'll put more weight into it, because now you're including both teams, not just one team, not just the favorite. And I'll
tell you what I told Greg Dempson many times in this 1 a.m. phone calls to me. I do not like point spread or totals parameters that are that tight when you're looking at a betting angle, meaning 3.5. I at least want to see a point spread or totals angle that expands to 7 points, like 47.5 to 54.5 or 53.5, anything like that. I would take a lot more credence in, but again, the numbers don't lie. So it'd be interesting to see what happens here. I'd have a hard time taking Tennessee. I know Auburn's not the Auburn that we've seen in recent seasons, but Tennessee right now is reeling. I mean, I think they've lost like 4 or 5 in a row, if I'm not mistaken.
Tennessee, 4 in a row.
Yeah.
I do have a trend or a system. I don't know if it's 96 or the last 3 years. I'll have to do any road team coming off 4 ATS losses, 44, 20, and 4 against the number. Favoring
what's
Tennessee.
the average line in those games? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, I'd have to pull that up.
I can guarantee any team in that situation, I would venture to say their average line in those games is somewhere between 14.5 to 21 points in that area. Again, that's what I would put a little more stock in. What's the average line in those games? When you start getting 10 and greater and you're only getting 10 points, there's a lot of covers in there that your teams are covering when they're losing by 24, 25 points is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, can you see what I'm doing right now?
Yes, I can.
The database?
Yes.
Okay. So coming off 4 ATS losses, we said, right?
Yep.
All right. So let's do that right here. 4 ATS loss. Let's see if it's since 96 or the last 3 years. That's what I want to see. So any team. So, okay. So it is last 3 years. It's not. All right. So let's go to last 3 years. And let's go get the average line on these games. So 4 ATS loss.
Yeah. And the other part is I thought it was 4 straight up losses in a row.
Yeah.
My
so
bad.
44, 24, and 0 ATS favoring Tennessee. So the average line here, 22. I don't know why that line's there. Oh yeah, minus 2.5. But did we put parameter? Oh no, road away teams.
Yeah, so
18.
you can see it varies between favorites and underdogs, right?
Yeah. Minus 4, minus 10, minus 2, minus 9, 18, 14, 10. You know what? It's a combination of, I'm seeing more double digits than I am. Yeah. Here, do you want to tighten it up? See where we do you want to go? What's the line of this game? Minus 10, 10 or more?
10 or more means nothing to me when you're getting just 10. You know what I mean? That's
okay.
I've been saying that,
Yeah.
It's just me personally, Ron.
Yeah, no, hey, you know what? And this is why I love doing
if you had a parameter of 10 to 21 even, I would look at it. But I mean, 10 or more, it could be anywhere from plus 10 to plus 50. You know what I mean? In college football. And what good is it doing if 3/4 of the covers in that situation were underdogs of 20 or greater, and you're only getting 10 points in that game? That's where I'm going with that, Ron.
Yeah. No, hey,
And
you
I'm
know what?
certainly not making light of these systems, okay? But if you're asking me to make sense of it and what's pertinent, I don't find that to be in this situation.
So you're saying put in parameters of -10 to 21?
Yeah, I
Minus
mean, I would
21?
say like you tighten up the parameters rather than 10 or greater. You could have a 10 or greater, that's fine, okay? But then for games like this where the number falls right on 10, I would almost want to look at how do they do as underdogs of 10 to 17. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do they do as an underdog of 7.5 to 13.5 or 14, where it fits in that criteria? I mean, when you start going 10 or greater and you're only getting 10, your number only falls on one number, 10. I mean, if you were getting 21, there might be numerous situations where they covered as less than a 21-point underdog and up to a 23-point underdog. That's where I'm going with this, Ron. I'm going to have to apologize to the listeners. I do too much research when it comes with my database, and I'm a numbers guy. So that's where my thinking is right there. You know what I mean? And it may not, does it make sense to you what I'm saying?
It
And I'm
does.
not saying you need to agree with me, but from my perspective, you know what I mean? That's where I'm going with this. In this particular instance, if you're asking me what kind of point spread parameter I would want to look at, better than a touchdown and 2 touchdowns or less. So 7.5 to 14 would be something if you got a good betting angle within those parameters supporting Tennessee as a 10-point underdog. I would put a lot more stock in that than 10 or greater.
And again, I'll come back to the point because we include the total. To me, it
I get
more
that.
weight. All right.
Your point is in your defense, so the listeners understand that where's Ron's going with that. If it's 47.5 to 51, chances are somebody's not a high scoring team in that game, or both teams aren't high scoring teams. So in Tennessee's case, they're not a very high scoring team.
Yeah, Mississippi State taking on Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia, 24-point favorite. The over-under at 44.5. Looking at the system here, any college football road team after a conference game last 2 years versus an opponent with a 61 to 70% win percentage, and they scored 24 points or more in their last game. 9 here if you like Mississippi State this evening, plus a 24.
Yeah, I have a hard time taking Mississippi State against anybody right now. But in terms of the betting angle, it's 9-1 against the spread. That is, Ron.
Yeah, 9-1.
Again, it doesn't specify underdog or favorite. So I would be more inclined to really like that as an underdog. That's now see, here's a perfect example. If you had that angle with this game with Tennessee's angle, I would like it a lot more, because 10 or greater, now you're talking about, it could go anywhere from 10 to 40, or now I want to look at how underdogs of 10 to 30 do. And it would be more applicable when it comes to a team that's plus 24 in that situation.
Yeah, but then you got to wonder how many occurrences will that happen with, right?
Well, again, plus 24 when it's plus 10 or greater is a lot better value to me, or more, let's put it this way, is a lot more pertinent to me than when you're talking about an underdog of 10 or greater, as opposed to somebody who's just getting plus 10. In that parameter of plus 10 or greater, if you've got a plus 24, it would make a lot more sense to me, is all I'm trying to say. It's just my personal belief, Ron.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? And that's why we do this show. We don't have to agree. We can agree to disagree, and it's not, it's
no. And I mean,
no
like you said, you brought up the thing about the total, and that makes perfect sense.
Yep.
That's where you could justify it a little bit.
Michigan taking on Rutgers. We have the Wolverines, who are struggling now, losers of 3 straight, taking on the Scarlet Knights, who are coming off a 23-20 loss, a game where they were winning, I believe, and then lost that game. That's a tough loss to Illinois.
Yeah.
Looking at
Yeah, those
this.
are winnable games when you're starting to build a program like Shiano is. You need to win, you know.
Yeah. Well, here's another one of your favorites. Any college football points of 10 or more. Favorite during week 8 to 12 on 6 days rest, coming off 2 overs, and they scored 13 points or less in their last game. Only 2-8 against the spread, but 8-2 to the over. But check this out, 10-0 straight up.
Okay, so basically we're looking at 8-2 to the over. I would look at more than Michigan. Okay,
Yeah.
in this situation, the reason being is you have a team that's a favorite of 10 or more, and they only scored 13 points or less in their last game, which means it's not they're coming off an unimpressive performance, specifically offensively, yet they're a favorite of 10 or more in the next game, which means they're playing a much inferior opponent in the bookmakers' eyes. So to me, I would look at the over in this game a lot more than I would look at Michigan as a side.
Okay. The over, looking at Rutgers, just trying to see, where they're at, scoring averages. Looking at their 26.5 on the season on offense, giving up 34 against.
Yeah.
Michigan, same thing, 34 against, scoring 26 on. Oh, they have identical type
Yeah.
of
What's
offense.
the total on that game? It's probably 60.
The total is set at 55.5.
Okay. Well, even more so. There's value there in the over, I think. And this is a particular angle that I would take stock in. And that goes back to 96. And you might say, okay, why is there only 10 occurrences since 96? Again, we're talking about a favorite of 10 or more. And you're talking about week 8 to week 12 in the season. You're talking about a team that is not coming off a bye week, and they're coming off 2 overs and they scored 13 or less. So you're really putting a lot of parameters in there, but to me, it all makes sense if you stop and think about it rationally when it comes to the over.
Georgia Tech, that game is off the board this weekend, I believe. With the
South Florida isn't, though. We skipped that.
Yeah, I'm going back to there. Navy against South Florida. Any home dogs, last 3 years, 8-12, playing on Saturday, coming off back-to-back ATS road losses, like South Florida is, coming off a road loss as an underdog, 10-2 to the over. So any home dog, last 3 years during week 8 to 12, playing on Saturday, coming off back-to-back ATS road losses and coming off a road loss as an underdog in their last game, 10-2 to the over.
Yeah, I just can't make sense of that. If you want to point something out that can make sense of that, other than the fact that the results within those parameters show 10-2 to the over. I'm not sure, but I mean, if you look at both of those teams, the over may be a possibility because South Florida is starting to pick it up offensively, and Navy's not great defensively. And other than that, I just can't see anything within that angle that jumps out at me, Ron.
Yeah, no. What it tells me is that you got 2 bad teams on defense who give up a lot of, who don't win games, and coming off like anytime you lose, there's something wrong going down. And teams that are not really good on defense, like these 2 teams are, the over does look good in this situation, and that's why the computer picks it out. That's why the system is bringing this up. So 10-2 to the over. Looking at both these teams, let me see here. Giving up 37.6 points, South Florida on defense, and for Navy, giving up 37 points. So maybe a little value there on the over, 10-2 to the over. All right, NFL. Let's take a look at these games here. Thursday night game between Arizona and Seattle. You got Seattle as a home favorite playing before a non-division game during the month of November, coming off a 2-game losing streak like they have against Buffalo and LA. And they're coming off a 2-game road stand, 19-9-2 against the spread in their next game. So Seattle, they do like it this weekend here, the system on the and I do like Seattle this weekend against Arizona.
Yeah, playing with revenge, right? Losing that first meeting at Arizona in overtime, 37-34. And home fair, I look at the straight up number, 25-5. I look at that and can make sense of that more because Seattle's only laying 3. So if they win straight up, the only way they're not going to cover is if they win by 1 or 2. So I would say that if you expanded this a little bit, yeah, it makes sense to me. This one makes sense to me more than any of the angles that we covered so far.
What are you trying to say, Ross?
No, I mean, look it's. I'm not discrediting the angles, but if we're, I'm trying to make sense of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because bottom line is, who cares if they got a non-division game? Now, if it was a non-division game and say they were playing Green Bay next or something like that, it would be one thing. But they're not going to overlook a game for first place in the division against Arizona. So that part of it, I don't care about. But when you're seeing 19-9-2 against the spread, and then they win 25 of the 30 straight up, and you're only laying 3, the combination of the ATS results and the straight up results make that strong for me. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I probably worded it wrong as far as I wasn't making light of the other ones, but this one, let's put it this way. This one makes more sense, the most sense out of all the angles we covered today.
No, that's fair. And the thing is that when you got a team like Seattle coming off 2 bad road performances, that's what the public remembers. Yep. They're a team that's struggling, but Seattle at home, unfortunately they don't have their fans. But this, to me, I do like a good letdown spot here for Arizona coming off.
Yeah, after that miracle win, and again, Seattle's playing with revenge, Ron, from a game they blew a 10-point lead at Arizona in the 4th quarter.
Yeah. And the last one here, any NFL 7 to 9.5 road underdog like the Jets are this weekend against the Chargers. And the after a conference game during the month of November, allowed 30 points or more against in their last game, and they're coming off a game that went over 16-4-1, favoring the Jets here this weekend.
Yeah. I just would buy, what I'm going to say, the 7 to 9.5 bothers me a little bit, but again, I wouldn't dispute this angle. I think that other than that, it makes sense.
Yeah. You know what, the Jets, and you got a Charger team. Yeah. Coming off a couple of bad beats, right? 29-21 against the Dolphins, 31-26 against the Chargers. And the Jets eventually, they're playing a little bit better. 30-27 against the Patriots on Monday night, 10-18 against the Bills. They got waxed by the Chiefs, but who doesn't? You know what? Like I said,
look, it makes sense, right, Ron? I mean, you're talking about a Chargers team that's 2-7. I know that all their losses have come by 8 or more, but you're asking this team to blow another team out. I know as bad as the Jets are, what would bother me taking the Chargers in this situation is the Jets are coming off 2 encouraging efforts, like you just said. I mean, they were a 14-point underdog in that game at home, I believe, against New England, if I'm not mistaken, or they were a double-digit dog. Let's put it that way, plus 10, I'm sorry. And they could have won that game. They gave it away. So, yeah, I wouldn't dispute that.
All right. Let's take a look at the 3 games tonight. We'll look at the computer picks here, Ross. You got Toledo taking on Eastern Michigan. Toledo, a 6.5-point road favorite. The over-under at 61.5. ATS forecast, the computer pick likes Toledo 26-23. The over-under at 50. The Rockets 1-1 on the season, up against an 0-2 Eastern Michigan Eagles team. Again, I haven't really looked a lot of these games here, but looking at these numbers and the history of Toledo, I don't know. I think you do have a selection on this game here this evening, which people
I do.
Yeah,
yes,
so or people are interested. Ross will have a selection on this game inside our members area.
It's up right now, as a matter of fact. 5-star ATS winner on the side in this game.
Okay, perfect. And again, you can get that at our website, ATS Stats, or at rbwins.com. Ball State taking on Northern Illinois. Ball State minus 14.5. The over-under set at 62.5. And looking at the forecast, 36-22 for Northern Illinois. Both teams playing on 6 days rest. Northern Illinois 0-2 in their last games this season, and 1-1 for Ball State. You know what? I don't really have an opinion on this game, but what do you think?
Boy, the computer's spot on when it comes to the point spread. That's for sure. And pretty close on the total as well. Northern Illinois, right now, they're struggling coming out of the gate, and both of those losses came on their home field. So now they go on the road to take Ball State, who's looks like a much improved team this year. I'm not going to touch this game, Ron, and I'm not even going to go out on a limb and give an opinion as far as who I might think would cover in this contest.
All right. Western Michigan taking on Central Michigan. The Battle of Michigan here this evening. The Broncos, a 1.5 point road favorite. The over-under at 58.5. Looking at this game, Ross, we have Western Michigan winning 35-28. Both teams 2-0. So somebody's going to probably get a loss here this evening. I'm leaning towards Central Michigan so far.
Yeah, somebody's going to get a loss, like you said, Ron. And Western Michigan coming off that thrilling win against Toledo in their last game, Ron. They trailed that game by 11 points with less than a minute to go. They scored a touchdown with 48 seconds to go. They recovered an onside kick, and then they took the ball down and scored a touchdown with less than 10 seconds to go. Sometimes I'm a little bit hesitant to take a team coming off a miracle win like that in the following week. Because they were emotionally sky high after that win, especially against a perennial MAC power in Toledo. The only thing that bothers me here is that Central Michigan opened as a favorite in this game, and now Western Michigan is the favorite. So I'd have to delve deeper into this a little bit before I gave a big opinion here. Right now, this is a game I'm staying away from at this current time.
What do you think of that when a line opens up for one team and then it flip flops to the other during the day?
Yeah, I like to look at where that money, how that line was moved. Meaning, was it a money generated move? Are we seeing it to be a sharp move? And when I say a sharp move, a good way to detect that, folks, is get to a credible site. Ron, your picture's gone. I don't know why.
Oh, really?
Go to a credible site that shows you betting trends. And when I mean betting trends, it shows you the volume of bets that were made and the money, the total money that was put on that game. For example, if Central Michigan opened as a 1.5 point favorite, or I should turn that around. If Western Michigan opened as a 1.5 point underdog and there was 30% of the volume of bets made on Western Michigan, yet it prompted 60% of the money, total money bet, then that's what I call a reverse line movement. And that would be an indicator to me there's some pretty sharp early money that went down on Western Michigan. That's what I would look at.
Yeah, I'm the same way. It's just you got to follow the which book, the sharp money, or is it early? Is it late? Those are the things you got to consider, right? Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. I am blank here. I can't see anything. All I see is a blank.
Yeah, I kept looking at you, and you had the same expression on your face when we're covered at college football angles. And then I noticed after a while you were frozen. You had that dumbfounded look on your face. I said, I can't be awing him on everything I'm saying, I can't be pissing him off on everything I'm saying. So, it's funny.
No. It's not responsive. I went blank when we were talking. And I said, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, we do this on Zoom, folks. So, it's probably something to do with the Zoom feed.
Exactly. All right, Ross, going tonight.
Yep. The Eastern Michigan Toledo winner, 5-star play at ATSStats.com, $35. If you don't want to spend the $35 because you think it's too much, well, then spend $149 on a week package at ATSStats.com, and you'll get everything in college football and NFL this week. Remember, folks, we're in a day and age right now where we're seeing football games every day of the week, whether it be college football or the NFL. So again, a 7-day package, $149. I do have this winner up tonight, Eastern Michigan Toledo, the winning side, and that's $35. If you're just somebody who wants to dabble in once in a while, you have that option to purchase daily picks now at ATSStats.com.
That's correct. And I'm not sure if I'll have a game up tonight, but I'll be doing more handicapping and research on all the 3 games this evening. But I will have a game for the NFL and college football this weekend. And hopefully we can cash you guys some nice winners for the week. All right, Ross. You know what? It's interesting matchup today's show today, and the thing is, these type of shows, sometimes you agree to disagree, and it's just
Yeah.
the way it goes, right? If we were to be agreeing on everything, that'd be boring for
Yeah, I
everybody.
mean, because because we disagree with each other, it doesn't mean that either one of us think the other one is drastically wrong. It's just our personal
No, exactly.
philosophy. We
Yep.
foundationally, we're both the same. Okay. But as you move along the lines and when you start spreading things out a little bit, everything you look at, how you decipher a line or an angle, you're always going to have differences no matter how good guys are. So if hopefully you listen to both of us and you took something away that you liked that Ron said, or you liked what I said, and you combined the two, and you're a more smarter sports better today than you were yesterday.
Exactly. It's easy to sit here and read the previews and all of that, but when you get into deep, detailed discussions, and this, to me, the show like today is like doing your homework, and we let the viewers inside of how we handicap games, and hopefully, people picked up on some of our angles and what we do and how we think, and hopefully it helps them with their handicapping. All right. All right, Ross. I'm gonna. I don't even know how to close this computer now because there's no buttons. It's all frozen. So,
Yeah.
what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna sign off, and then I'll try to log back in, and hopefully this will work. For Ross Benjamin, I'm Ron Raymond. This was the Raymond Report Sports Betting Podcast for Wednesday, Hump Day, November 18th. As always, folks, shop for value, play those percentages. We'll see you back shortly with another Raymond Report.